topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Are you ready for Insights to Incite? Ready or not, it's showtime. Now get ready to listen in and watch right here on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Join us and together we will escape the mundane. Insights to Incite, here is your host, Brandon Lawson.
Some days are better, some days are worse. Look for the blessing instead of the curse. Be positive, stay strong, and get enough rest. You can't do it all, but you can do your best. Friend, I personally want to thank you for joining us this Thursday. We are always glad to have you here with us. Now, very quickly, I want to mention a couple specials I'm offering as we're nearing the end of 2021. While I'm not a tax accountant or a tax expert in the slightest, I do believe that you should be able to write these offer. These be tax deductible for you should you take me up on this offer. But the first one is, should you want to advertise, that is, have a commercial air of your business, your church, your show, podcast. If you want to air it on my show, you need to call me. Call Brandon at 513-708-1517. And if you call now through the end of the year, I am offering a special discount to those who agree to air beginning in 2022. For only $165 for 2 shows or for $320 for a month, you can air your show, church, or other advertisement upon approval of the aforementioned rates, for the aforementioned rates. And second is, should you invite me to speak, whether that be to your church, school, an organization, perhaps it's a camp, retreat, or a conference, I would deliver 2 messages for the same, and if these are on the same day, it's for $325, and whether it be 2 messages separated over 2 days for $395, or should the 2 messages span 3 days, then be for $475, or 3 messages spanning 3 days for $595. If what you have in mind differs from the aforementioned, but you still would like me to come, please call me and we can talk more and see what we can work out. But you can call me at Brandon. It's my direct number at 513-708-1517. And you can also reach me via email at brandon@connectandimpact.net. So today is Thursday, December 2nd, the first Thursday of the last month of this year of 2021. I have to ask you, do you recall the Christmas from your childhood that wasn't all that great? Think back. Is there any time that, you can recall that, that Christmas wasn't what you expected, didn't live up to par? Perhaps it was because it wasn't white. It didn't snow. There's something about, a lot of people associate Christmas with being a white Christmas, where as a kid, you like to go out and play in the snow, build a snowman. Or maybe it's you didn't get what you asked for. Your heart was set on a gift and you never got it. Or perhaps, sadly, you lost a loved one the one year during that holiday season, someone who was dear and near to your heart. And chances are still is, if that's you who lost one. And I can recall a friend I knew years ago named Tom who had lost his father. It was either on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve. And that was always a sad reminder every Christmas. It wasn't just that one year that affected it. It tended to linger every year. But with that said, whatever it is that made your Christmas that year, to be subpar, Now, I think it's safe to say you either didn't get what you expected or you got what you didn't expect. Yet either way, the sadness or the drudgery or less than merry Christmas experience that you endured was tied to your expectations. Yes. Expectations, they can create excitement and elation, and they can knock you down within. And I mean, knock you down spiritually, your mood sinks. They can knock you down, or they can sink you and submerge you into a sea of depression. Yes. Thus, it will do us well to hold them lightly or loosely. Because while we do have expectations, and at times rightfully so, even though I'd suggest that we not become fixated on them. Yes. We are now at lesson 5 in our series, Issues That Inhibit Us. And today, I'm going to speak to you on the subject of disappointment. Disappointment is certainly not a popular subject or one you would hear perhaps at this juncture of the year. Nonetheless, it is more common for many. During this time of the year, the holiday season, you'll find that many are discouraged, depressed, and disappointed. Yes, it's much more common during the Christmas season than one might realize. Yet disappointment is not something we look forward to with eager anticipation. If we find ourselves waiting and watching for this, then it's more from, with great anxiety. In such instances, we are fearful of what is to come. We expect it, and although we dread it, we don't want to be blindsided by it. And so we watch and we wait. We wait and we watch. Friends, let me just say, disappointment is a fact of life. Yes. I mean, it's going to happen if you are here on planet Earth for any length of time. I mean, it's rare, that unless someone suddenly is stillborn or passes shortly after birth, I can't say that you will never experience disappointment, because it's a fact of life. And with that said, while it's a fact of life, in no way does it need to be, or should it be, a way of life. Yes. Here are a few words to ponder over. Associate, assume, attach. All three of these words can be the missing link that, if we have any one of them, connects us to or leads us into disappointment. Today, I'm going to speak about what the causes are and how we can combat this dis-ease known as disappointment. Yet first, we're going to step away to our first commercial break. And when we come back, we'll be getting into these, looking at these three words and expounding on them in greater depth. We'll be right back.
Are you on the edge of your seat and wanting more? Stay tuned as we go on a quick break, and we'll be right back with more Insights to Incite with Brandon Lawson, right here on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. Are you seeking a speaker or coach who speaks life into your people? If so, look no further. Brandon Lawson is one who will inspire and motivate his audience, as well as empathize and relate to all. Reach out to Brandon and let him be your speaker and life coach by sending an email to brandon@connectandimpact.net or by calling him at 513-708-1517. Brandon looks forward to speaking with you, to you, and for you. Let's connect and impact today. Insights to Incite, a real show with real-life messages. This show, which can be found on radio, TV, and our podcast, gives us insight to incite us to action and to excellence. Watch and or listen to Insights to Incite live at noon Eastern Time every Thursday on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Check out our past episodes on iHeartRadio, YouTube, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. Join us each week, and together we will escape the mundane. We are back with more Insights to Incite, so get ready and tune in to listen and watch. Now once again, let's join Brandon Lawson.
The three words that can very easily lead us into the land of or drown us in the sea of disappointment. 1, associate. Now, don't give a quick answer, but do ask yourself, who is it that I associate with that tends to drain me? Just about everyone tends to associate with someone they know drags them down or tends to depress their mood, and is not a great encourager by any means, yet we still associate with them. Who is it for you? This is the person who is always complaining. They're always complaining, they're criticizing, they gossip about others. They always have something to sulk about. Yes. Now, after you've identified who these people are, ask yourself, do I really need to associate? Do I need to continue to associate or hang around with these people? Is it all that necessary? I mean, is it required of me? Friend, I don't know about you, but I sometimes have a hard time breaking away from those people because I care about them. But I have found that once I do, my life is better. And I want to impress upon you, because what I suffered with was I needed to get past this idea that I was being selfish if it was better for me. And I think that many of you might need to get past that as well. While it may seem selfish, you're not as good for others. You're not as effective at being an encourager if you're always discouraged, depressed, disappointed. Do you want to do great things? Do you want to be your best? Well, you can't have others dragging you down. There's enough in life that happens without us voluntarily putting ourselves in the company of someone who we know will drag us down. But if you can't bring yourself to totally sever it, then maybe you should ask yourself, can I lessen the frequencies of my visits? Can I, not come around as often? I mean, sometimes the best thing you can do for them and yourself, for both of you, is to disassociate, to separate from those people. Only then will they perhaps realize what a gift, what a friend they had in you. You're no longer there because they drove you away. But you have to, for your sake and for the sake of others that you're around, you have to separate. You have to distance yourself from that. Yes. Our second word is assume. Have you made any assumptions about anyone as of late? I know that I try not to do this, to make assumptions about anyone, or that, yet I still find myself doing it from time to time. And quite frankly, if I was to find out every time that I did it, I think it's safe to say that I do it more often than I'd like to admit. Author Roginal Rios asserted, assuming is the root of all disappointments. Yes, assuming is the root of all disappointments. But why? Why would he say this? Well, obviously I can't answer for him, but let me give you my take, my understanding on this. You see, assumption carries with it an expectation. When you assume something, from that assumption, you have an expectation. For instance, let's say I take my car to the local garage to get an oil change and to get new brake pads put on. In doing so, I assume the mechanic who's going to work on the car knows how to do the work and how to do it properly. Thus, I expect the job to be done correctly and thoroughly. Yet, what if that mechanic has not replaced brake pads before? That I'm the first vehicle that he's had to do this on. Well, obviously, if he doesn't know how to do the work, then he should not be the one that's it's assigned to. Get somebody else who knows how. Yet, if I was to go in there and I'm gonna tell them what I need, and I say, by the way, the mechanic who's going to work on my car, he knows how to do this job, right? Both the oil change and replacing brake pads. If I ask that at a local garage or at any garage, a place where there's mechanics, that this is their work, their profession, if you ask that, that may very well be interpreted as an insult. I mean, they might say, yeah, or they might just say, take your car elsewhere, or who knows what they'd say, but it wouldn't be looked on very well. But, we expect the job to be done, but if that's the first time that he's been assigned to do that, who knows how well he would do it. And friends, that may seem odd or weird that, you take your car there, but a mechanic doesn't know how to do the work. But let me assert to you that crazier things have happened. And let me just share one incident with you, of how crazy this is. Take, for instance, Sweden and Poland flew at each other's throats back in 1654. And you know why? It was because the King of Sweden discovered that his name in an official publication was followed by only 2 et ceteras, whereas the King of Poland's name was followed by 3 et ceteras. Yes, can you picture this? The King of Sweden assumed that he was being demeaned or belittled by this little detail, and thus they went after each other, neck to neck, to destroy one another. See, assumption can be very powerful, and the power it yields rarely is for good. It's either neutral or bad. Occasionally you might find good came out of your assumption, but, you know, more often than not, it's not a positive. Number 3, attach. Do you recall the most recent instance where you went somewhere for the first time, some place, or maybe it was an event? Anything come to mind? As you went to this event afterwards, you may very well have been asked, so how was it? What did you think of it? Did you enjoy it? Is it what you expected? I know I have been asked this on more than a few occasions, and my response would typically differ on the first two. What did you think? Did you enjoy it? It will typically differ from one event to another. Yet that third question, is it what you expected? Rarely does that differ. Yes, it rarely differs because I am not one to give my mind over to the realm of expectation. You see, I instead like to keep an open mind. While I hope the event or the experience will be enjoyable, thought provoking, productive, or beneficial in some way, some form, I don't go in with an expectation attached to it. And does this limit my occasions where I get disappointed? Perhaps. Perhaps not. But I will tell you, this does weaken the impact or the effect thereof. The disappointment does not affect me the way or to the extent that it would otherwise, had my mind and my heart been fixated on it. It has been said, sometimes we create our own heartbreaks through expectation. Sometimes we create our own heartbreaks through expectation. So, what are we to do? What can we do? Perhaps that's the question. Well, first, let's consider those expectations plus assumptions. The expectations hold lightly, hold loosely, and assumptions minimize. Don't allow yourself to be absorbed in or with an expectation or an assumption. Lower your expectations. Remove your assumptions as much as you can. Listen to how Randy Carlson put it. He stated, the definition of disappointment in life is expectation minus reality equals disappointment. The only two solutions you have to get over disappointment is to either alter your reality or alter your expectations. So it would do us well if we can lower those expectations, that we can minimize or perhaps, if possible, remove the assumptions. Now, second is remember plus focus. Yes. Remember plus focus. There was a warrior in times past. Many of us know of him. Some know more of him, know him better than others. But This warrior from times past, as a young adolescent, took care of his father's sheep and looked after his pasture. And another father took notice of him and called upon him. This father anointed him and made him king of his chosen people. And in between the time he was anointed to the time he assumed the mantle, was sworn in as the king, he was threatened and found himself running for his life on more than a couple occasions. Knowing this, and how his new father, who took notice of him, had been there with him, protected and delivered him in times past, David, the man after God's own heart, according to 1 Samuel 13:14 and Acts 13:22, David drew encouragement from this remembrance, and this is where he gave his focus. Yes. There are two passages that I want to share with you that highlight this. The first passage comes from 1 Samuel chapter 30. I'm going to read the first 6 verses of the chapter. I'm going to turn there here quickly. First Samuel chapter 30. David and his men arrived in Ziklag on the 3rd day. The Amalekites had raided the Negev and attacked and burned down Ziklag. They also had kidnapped the women and everyone in it, from the youngest to the oldest. They had killed no one, but had carried them off as they went on their way. When David and his men arrived at the town, they found it burned down. Their wives, sons, and daughters had been kidnapped. David and the troops with him wept loudly until they had no strength left to weep. David's 2 wives, Ahinoam the Jezreelite and Abigail, the widow of Nabal the Carmelite, had also been kidnapped. David was in a difficult position because the troops talked about stoning him, for they were all very bitter over the loss of their sons and daughters. But David found strength in the Lord his God. Did you notice that verse 6? Now David is greatly distressed, for the people spoke of stoning him, because the soul of all the people was grieved. And yet David found strength. He encouraged himself in the Lord his God. Then, if we look at Psalm 27, verses 1 through 3, and that reads, The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked came against me to eat up my flesh, they stumbled and fell. Though an army encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war may rise against me, in this I will be confident. And in that first verse, going back there, the Psalm 27, the first one, Roxy, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? What I want you to see is David's focus. First of all, confidence doesn't come from a lack of opposition. David knew all about opposition. Being that he was a man after God's own heart, he was constantly oppressed. He was being, persecuted, people coming after him, temptation put before him. And as most of us know, he fell prey to that temptation in time and committed a very vile act on 2 accounts within the same event itself. But, David was a man after God's own heart. That means he desired to follow God, to know the heart of God and to live it out. Then we see that his focus was on, the Lord, his God. And then if we look in verse 2, If we can put that up. Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked came against me to eat up my flesh, my enemies and foes, they stumbled and fell. I want you to notice 3 words here. Came, stumbled, fell. If you notice, those are all past tense. David had drawn from his experience of times past. He knew when his enemies came against him, they stumbled. They stumbled, they fell. And in knowing this, in this present time, he was encouraged. And he even stated, and though an army war against me and camp against me, I will not fear, for in this I will be confident. Let's look there to verse 3. Though an army may encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war may rise against me, in this I will be confident. You see, he knew from past experience. That's that remembrance of how God had protected him and delivered him. And in doing so, he gave focus to the better, to God, the Lord. The Lord is my light and my salvation. He drew upon that, and as a result, he was able to stand his ground and do the right thing in this moment, in this time. Yes, he did fall and prey to the temptation and the different things in time, but in this moment, he stood firm and did what was right. So, finally, number 3, renew and share. We often discover renewal after experiencing the better, after coming to know something more, or rising up out of that rut. We find renewal. And let me encourage you, as you find renewal, to share his goodness, to share the goodness you have. Or perhaps you might find your renewal in sharing his goodness. There are some times where focusing on that goodness and sharing that and making that your life's appetite, that you take in that and you breathe that out. It is in that you experience your renewal, that you come to know a better life. But either way, whether you are to experience renewal before you share, or in sharing you experience that renewal, I encourage you, don't wait. Speak up. Do good. Share your life, and more importantly, share his goodness. Be gentle in heart and be loving in service. In doing so, you will be a great encouragement. And the writer to the Hebrews wrote in chapter 3, verse 13, encourage one another as long as it is called today. There it is. But exhort one another day by day, so long as it is called today, lest any of you be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. Sin, especially sin that that's done to us, not necessarily our own sin, but sin that's committed against us. Like false accusations, or just being, preyed upon, and the evil that's pursuing us to do us wrong when we haven't done wrong. That sin, or it could be the sin that you've done, can harden us. It makes us hard and very bitter and brittle. And we're not very pliable when we're hard. And we want to be pliable for the Father to mold us and shape us into the people we should be. We recognize that he is the potter, that we are the clay. But if the clay is so hard, it has to be pounded on to soften. Sin has its way of hardening us. Therefore, we need encouragement. And one of the best ways you can be encouraged is when you know you are an encouragement to another person, to other people. That always lifts me, makes me feel so good. When I encourage others, I'm automatically encouraged. By default, I experience great encouragement. So I encourage you to be an encourager today and every day. As long as you are here, as long as it is called today, encourage and exhort one another. Do this to others and for others, and you'll find that you experience it as well. Yes. Friends, we are nearing the end of today's show, but before I get to the end here to close this out, just a couple of things I want to mention. On that, remember and focus. One of the ways we often focus or can focus is not just on the Lord, and that in the scripture or that, but also in prayer, in releasing, the troubles to Him. David noted in Psalm 17:47, it's when he's facing Goliath. He said, the Lord, the battle belongs to the Lord. Here we see it. And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and He will give you into our hands. And how does the battle become the Lord's? When we release it to Him. When we cast our cares upon Him, we'll find that He cares for us, that He sustains us. You can find this in 1 Peter 5:7, as well as Psalm 55:22. So I just want to put that little fact in. And now just to mention, we're nearing the end of today's show, today's broadcast. Thus, I want to thank you for tuning in. And for those specials I'm offering, should you be interested and want to know more, call me. Call Brandon directly at 513-708-1517. And I recognize that it's pretty much a given that you and I will not see eye to eye on everything. Some things, yes. Other things, no. So we won't always see eye to eye. Yet, still, I invite you to join me here on Eye to Eye. Insights to Incite. We are here every Thursday at 12 noon Eastern on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. I thank you, be blessed, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Wow, what an insightful show. Thanks for listening in and watching today. If you missed any part of today's show or any other episode, check it out on iHeartRadio, YouTube, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. Now take today's insight and utilize it. Incite yourself to action and to excellence in the week ahead, and join us again next Thursday and every Thursday at 12 noon Eastern Time for another insightful session with Brandon Lawson as he speaks to us and shares some more insights to Incite right here on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV.